Here's a hard truth for those of you who are rebuilding your lives after a life shift, a major life shift, like divorce, career loss, maybe becoming an empty nester, just simply being stuck after a shift in your life has really changed your identity, or rather, feel like you've lost it. Okay. Here's a sad truth for that. Your heart is lying to you right now. That visceral pull toward what feels comfortable, familiar, or emotionally soothing, well, it's not wisdom. It's your wounded self desperately trying to avoid more pain. At 40 or 50, after losing a major piece of your identity, your heart will drag you back to familiar territory, even when it's toxic. That craving to reconnect with your ex, that's not love. That's fear of facing who you are without them. That urge to retreat to safety, a comfortable, confident place, that's not self protection. It's resistance to becoming something new, unknown. That voice telling you, I just want to feel better. Well, it's keeping you from the growth that you desperately need. The most dangerous words in midlife reinvention are not, I can't, they're, I want. Because what you want right now might be the very thing that's preventing you from discovering who you're meant to become next, that next version. Welcome, everybody, to the Bulletproof Mindset podcast for those navigating life's most disorienting transitions. I'm Thomas. I'm a certified high performance coach, a former actor, a writer, author, and a twice divorced dad of daughters who's learned the hard way that rebuilding your life requires more than just following your feelings. Today's episode speaks directly to those of you who may be between 35 or 55 or beyond or below who feel lost after a major life shift. Maybe you're recently divorced and questioning your worth. Perhaps you've lost a career that defined you for a long, long time. Maybe your kids have left home and you're wondering who you are without them being around to need you. Okay. Or maybe you're just simply facing that midlife realization that the path you've been on forever isn't leading you where you thought it would. Well, if you've been lying awake at night thinking, I don't know who I am anymore, and I'm afraid that I'm never going to feel confident again, well, this is the episode specifically written for you. We're diving deep into why your heart wants what it wants, but doesn't know what it needs, and how this critical distinction will determine whether you stay stuck or create an exciting next chapter of your life. Let me be absolutely clear about what I said earlier at the start, okay? In the aftermath of a major identity shift, your emotional compass is compromised. Your heart will constantly pull you toward what feels safe, familiar, temporarily soothing, but those very instincts can sabotage your reinvention more than serve it. This isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. Okay. So when you lose a core piece of your identity, especially in your 40s or 50s, your brain enters a state similar to withdrawal. The neural pathways that defined you for decades are suddenly disrupted. So your brain, desperate to reduce this discomfort, it's going to push you toward the familiar, those patterns, even harmful ones, simply to restore a sense of normalcy. Glennon Doyle captures this perfectly in the book Untamed. Says this: feelings are information, not directions. Your feelings after a major transition in your life are going to contain valuable data about your wounds, your fears, your conditioning. But your feelings make terrible navigational tools for your future. According to research from the University of Virginia, people in midlife transition who make decisions based primarily on emotional comfort rather than growth, they're significantly more likely to report regret, stagnation 5 years, 10 years later. The question isn't whether your feelings are valid. They absolutely are. There's no one here saying that you should never validate your feelings. The question is whether following those feelings will lead you toward confident, purposeful version of yourself that you want to become, or are you circling the drain of that emotional territory that was, wondering why nothing ever changes? You know, I often ask the question on this show, what happens if we don't fix this? I think it applies here terribly well. What happens if you keep following what your heart wants without discerning what it really needs? I've seen this play out in dozens and dozens of examples with clients in midlife transition, and the consequences are devastating. I call it the identity vacuum spiral. Okay. Nature abhors a vacuum, especially in identity. When you lose a core role like your spouse or your career, um, active parent, okay, without intentionally creating something new. So you lose the old identity without having a new identity in its place. You don't just stay neutral, you actively regress. I've watched accomplished professionals who have lost their jobs at 50 or older become shells of themselves within weeks because they followed their heart's desire for comfort rather than embracing the discomfort of the opportunity to reinvent who they are. Another particularly painful thing to witness is the false start syndrome. Okay. You gather your courage, you take that step forward, maybe dating somebody again, starting a new business or a new job, exploring a new passion that you couldn't while you were a parent. But because you're following your wants, your emotional soothing, okay, rather than your needs, genuine growth, you sabotage yourself. Each false start is going to erode your confidence more and more until you stop trying altogether, convinced that it is what it is. This is just who I am now. And another thing that's going to happen if you don't fix this is the what I call the time acceleration effect. It's the most crucial part of midlife transition. When you're stuck following emotional comfort over growth, time doesn't just pass you by, it blows you by, it accelerates. I've had 55-year-old clients suddenly realize that they've spent 5 or more years in emotional limbo, still defining who they are by the loss that happened half a decade before. At this stage of life, 5 years is not something you can just casually write off. And then last, the relationship replacement trap. This is for you younger people, especially. But age does not discriminate when it comes to matters of the heart. Your heart seeking comfort will push you to replace what you've lost rather than invent something you need for yourself. This happens very often after a breakup or especially a divorce after a long marriage. It drives you toward a relationship that feels familiar, often with the same toxic patterns as the one you had before. After your career loss, it pushes you to recreate your old role, but with new environment or new people, rather than explore those new possibilities that are out there. For you empty nesters listening, it tempts you to find new people to care for rather than discovering who you are now that you're not needed so much. Mike is 48 years old, a client of mine. He lost both his 20-year marriage and his executive position he'd held for over a decade within 6 months of each other. I believe it was about 4.5 months. His heart wanted the comfort of familiarity and validation. So he immediately jumped into the dating apps and started dating a younger woman and took the very first job that was offered to him. It was actually several steps down from the role that he had previously that he lost. Well, the relationship quickly became a crutch to him, and the uninspiring job eroded him, his self-image, his self-confidence further and further. It wasn't until he hit rock bottom, realizing he'd spent 2 years of his life trying to numb his pain rather than processing it. Well, It was then that he finally recognized the difference between what his heart wanted, the escape from discomfort, and what it needed, which was space to grieve, to let go, and to rebuild his identity. Hey, it's Thomas. And if this episode resonates with you, I want to make sure you know about our free community, Becoming Bulletproof. It's a free community built for people just like you, people that feel stuck in the shadow of past failure or struggling just to move forward after setbacks and challenges in life. Maybe you've struggled to find a place where you can finally reclaim your identity or rebuild the confidence you've lost or find that resilience to thrive. This isn't just a community group. This is meant to be a movement, a transformative space where men and women can redefine who they are and break free from those limiting beliefs and develop habits and skills necessary to create the life they love. In Becoming Bulletproof, you're going to discover how to turn pain into power and setbacks into stepping stones. You'll find tools to build emotional resilience and clarity and confidence, even practical strategies for setting boundaries and mastering time management. I mean, who doesn't need that? Forming habits that fuel long-term growth? Bring it. Most importantly, you're going to find a community that's got your back. Every step of the way, we're going to share stories and celebrate wins together, hold each other up when we need that support to move forward. So, if you're ready to stop letting your past define who you are today and start living that creation of a future you deserve, well, this is your moment. This is your step. Join Becoming Bulletproof today. It's free and it's waiting for you. So go to becomingbulletproof.info right now and sign up for that free community. Let's do this. Together we can become bulletproof. Join today. Let me share something deeply personal with you here that illustrates exactly this tension between wants and needs. After my second divorce, I was somewhat disoriented. For over 2 decades, my identity had been built around being a husband, being a father, and now with my 2 daughters, you know, only with me part-time and my marriage now over, I felt lost, utterly. The question I asked myself was predominantly, "Who am I now? Who am I going to be?" My identity immediately circulated around what I will call damaged goods. I'd been divorced twice. This wasn't philosophical in a question, it was visceral, consuming me day and night. My heart desperately wanted comfort and validation. It craved the familiarity of being in a relationship, that security, of being needed by somebody else. Within weeks, I found myself exploring dating apps and other things, and I did join a support group that actually had several women who were potential rebound relationships. I even contemplated reaching out to my ex. I convinced myself I was putting myself out there and doing the things I needed to do to move forward, and in reality, I was just trying to escape the terrifying emptiness of facing myself. I remember sitting in my all too quiet house one night, swiping through social media, sometimes a dating profile, while ignoring the stack of personal development books that I bought, to work on myself. I was exhausted, pretending to be the, person who's fine at work, resentful about my ex's new relationship, completely disconnected from any sense of purpose. Well, that's when it hit. I wasn't moving forward. I wasn't moving at all. I was desperately trying to recreate what I'd lost rather than build something new. What my heart wanted was to fill the void immediately with another relationship, with a constant distraction, with maybe a new job, with anything to avoid the pain of reinvention. But what it needed was the very discomfort that I was avoiding: solitude, self examination and evaluation, the patience to discover who I could be, who I wanted to be. Making that distinction changed everything. I deleted the dating apps, didn't need them anymore. I established firm boundaries with my ex that still we're working on today in a fairly decent relationship, co-parenting relationship. I committed to 6 months of being intentionally single, not out of bitterness, but out of a desire to create space for genuine growth in finding who I was. I started therapy. I joined a men's group focused on, being authentically masculine. And I reconnected with passions that I'd abandoned for years, like reading, like golf. Those 6 months were often brutally uncomfortable. There were nights that I stared at the ceiling all night, questioning every decision I'd ever made. There were weekends when my daughters were with their respective mothers that I felt endless. There were moments that I felt absolutely certain that I had made the biggest mistake in choosing growth over comfort because it didn't feel good. But slowly, daily, weekly, something remarkable happened to me. As I stopped chasing what I wanted and started giving myself what I needed, I began to rediscover parts of my life and myself that I'd forgotten even existed. My creativity returned. My energy increased. My relationship with each of my daughters deepened and improved because I was finally emotionally present rather than constantly distracted by my own need for validation. I learned the skill. I discovered the secret of validating my own feelings so that I didn't look or expect others to do that for me. And most importantly, I developed a relationship with myself that wasn't dependent on any external role or connection. I discovered that I could be worth everything to myself, purposeful, and yes, happy, not because I was someone else's husband or boyfriend or father, but because you know, I was needed for myself, not for someone else, simply because I was intentionally creating a life aligned with my new values. Guys, this was not a linear journey. There were setbacks. There were moments of weakness, absolutely. But the distinction between following my heart's wants versus its needs became my North Star. And I had discovered a secret process that within a few short weeks completely changed the trajectory of my life. A life that was headed for bitterness, despair, into a life that is successful, full of abundance and joy and love. And when I eventually did start dating again, it wasn't from a place of emptiness needing to be filled, but it was from a place of wholeness, seeking genuine connection. So if you're in that disorienting space of transition right now, if you have lost a piece of yourself, your identity, and you're desperate to feel normal again, I need you to hear this. The comfort your heart wants will always keep you stuck. The growth that it needs, while difficult, that's the key to unlock the door to freedom. All right, so I'm gonna share with you 3 points to uh, expand on this subject here to help you make the distinction between what the heart wants and what the heart needs. Point number 1, your desires are often shaped by your deepest wounds, not your highest potential. There's a quote out there, and I don't know who this quote is attributed to, but it isn't mine. I want to be clear on that. Not everything that feels good is good for you. I'm sure we've heard that a number of different ways, but in midlife transition, your strongest desires are rarely pointing toward growth. They're usually pointing toward pain relief. It's crucial to know the difference. This distinction is critical if you want to move forward rather than circle the same emotional territory over and over again. Your brain is wired to protect you from psychological discomfort just as aggressively as it protects you from physical pain. When a core piece of your identity is threatened or lost, your desires become primarily focused on reducing that distress, not on facilitating growth. It's called a survival mechanism, and we all have them built in. Rebecca, a 52-year-old client of mine who had built her entire identity around her high-powered corporate career. Well, when she was unexpectedly laid off during company reconstruction, is what they called it, to her, her heart drove her to immediately applying for similar positions, despite having always dreamed of starting her own consulting business. What her heart wanted was to restore her familiarity identity and her reduction of anxiety, her security in a job that paid. What it needed was to use this disruption as a catalyst for creating something that was truly going to fulfill her. It wasn't until she recognized this distinction that she found the courage to launch that new business that she'd been dreaming about for decades. And she's doing it. She's in a successful place right now. And it never would have happened if she listened to what her heart desired. So here's a practical step with this first point. I call this the desire discernment exercise. So when you feel a strong emotional pull towards something, anything, a relationship, a job, a behavior, ask yourself this: is this desire pulling me toward growth or away from pain? If it's primarily about avoiding discomfort, it's likely a want masquerading as a need. Okay, write down 3 growth-oriented alternatives that might be better for you in that specific scenario, serving your reinvention, even if they feel a little uncomfortable right now. This will give you a compass, a barometer to make the distinction between, am I running away from pain or am I running toward growth? Point number 2, temporary discomfort is the price of lasting transformation. We can say it several ways. Neil Walsh says it this way: growth begins at the end of your comfort zone. Another way to put this is no pain, no gain. This quote, I mean, it's become a cliche, but it contains profound truth for those navigating midlife transition. Your heart, seeking comfort, will resist the very experiences that lead you to reinvent yourself. At this stage of life, after decades of establishing patterns and identities, growth requires not just stepping outside your comfort zone. Sometimes it means dismantling it altogether. This creates kind of a paradox. Okay. The very discomfort that your heart wants to avoid is precisely what it needs to transform. It's why we stay stuck. Another client of mine, James, 49 years old at the time, found himself suddenly divorced after his wife of 21 years left him. No warning, no indication. To him, it literally came out of left field. His heart wanted the comfort of routine and familiarity, so he maintained the same schedule, ate at the same restaurants, even kept his ex-wife's belongings that she had left behind exactly as she had left them in that place that she left. His breakthrough came when he forced himself to do one uncomfortable thing every day. Okay? Eating alone at a new restaurant, rearranging the furniture, joining a social group where he knew absolutely nobody. Each small act of embracing discomfort gradually expanded his capacity for reinvention. 6 months later, he had developed new friendships, discovered new interests, and begun creating an identity independent of his marriage. Okay, so here's a practical step for this second step. I call it the discomfort curriculum. Create a specific plan to systematically expose yourself to growth-oriented discomfort. Start small, one minor stretch daily, okay? Then gradually increase it and challenge yourself. Track your progress, not by how comfortable you feel, but by how your capacity for handling uncertainty expands. This deliberately rewires your brain over time to associate discomfort with growth rather than a threat. And when we see discomfort as our catalyst rather than the threat of pain, we'll grow more. We'll take that step. And point number 3, identity reconstruction or reinvention requires both demolition and architecture. Okay, self-care is giving the world the best of you, not what's left of you. That's Katie Reed. This quote highlights a critical truth about midlife reinvention. You cannot build a new identity while you're desperately clinging to the remains of your old one. Many people in transition make this mistake, trying to add new elements to their life without first creating space for them, emotional, psychological, sometimes physical space for genuine transformation. Your heart, fearing the emptiness of those things, will resist this necessary demolition. But just as you can't build a new structure without first clearing the ground, you can't create a new identity without first releasing the aspects of the old one. Lisa is a 46-year-old client, and she dedicated 20 years of her life to raising her children. It's all she did. It was her full-time task, job, career. When her youngest left for college, she experienced a profound identity crisis. Her heart wanted to maintain her role as the primary caregiver. It's all she knew for over 20 years. Calling her children multiple times a day, inserting herself into their college experience. She even considered moving closer to their campus so that she could see them every day as they left class. Her transformation began when she recognized that her heart's desire to maintain her caregiving identity was preventing her from discovering who she could become beyond motherhood. So it was hard for her, but she started down that road. She established healthier boundaries with her adult children, deliberately creating space in her life, physical space, by repurposing her children's rooms, emotional space by limiting the check-ins, the number of times she'd call or text, and temporal space by blocking off hours previously dedicated to caretaking to do something fun for her. This created a vacuum necessary for new interests and identities that just quickly emerged in her. Within a year, she had discovered a new passion for environmental advocacy, and she now leads an advocacy group in her city for that. And they are saving the river in her area. She's developed new friendships independent of her identity as a mother, and she's established a much healthier relationship with each of her adult children based on that mutual respect rather than the dependency that sometimes comes with parent-child relationships. So here's a practical step for this third point. I call it the identity inventory, and this is a really fun one. So I want you to write this down. I want you to make 3 lists, okay? List number 1 is identities I've lost. List number 2, identities I'm clinging to, and list number 3, identities that I want to develop. For each item on the clinging to list, I want you to identify one concrete step that you can create to make space for yourself by loosening your grip on that identity. For each item on the I want to develop list, identify one small action you can take this week to begin cultivating that aspect of yourself. Then, at the end of each week, review and update this inventory every month or so as you need. I'd review it every week and update it once a month as your sense of self starts to evolve. So if you're standing at the crossroads of who you were and who you're becoming, here's what I want you to do next. First, I want you to consider joining our free community. It's called Becoming Bulletproof. You'll find the link for that in our free resources link, and that's becomingbulletproof.info/resources. It's a free group. It will always be free to you. And in this group, we're going to go deeper into some training around these areas. It's an extension of this podcast, obviously, but it's also support. We are filled with people that are moving forward in spite of the fear of the unknown. We're all in that wake of that life shift that we're all trying to navigate, and we're helping each other through it. I have created and I am teaching aspects of what I call the bulletproof life pillars in that group. And if you're really interested in ready to take that first step in rediscovery, rebuilding, reigniting your own identity, this is specifically designed for you. Midlife transition, a person who's ready and wanting to transform the disruption into direction. Okay, so you're going to get practical tools for distinguishing between what your heart wants and what your heart truly needs during this critical phase. Another thing, download the Bulletproof Mindset. It's my free book. You can find that at that same link. It outlines the entire mindset structure of the Bulletproof Life, and it's yours free for just being a subscriber. If you haven't already subscribed here, do so. Also follow us on TikTok and Instagram at the Bulletproof Life. And finally, maybe you need a little bit more help. Maybe you're listening to this and you're saying over and over and over again, you know what, that's me, and it's been me for a long time, and I just don't know how to fix it. At that same link, you can book a free breakthrough call. This is what we do. We help people just like you find that roadmap, gain that clarity, develop the energy they need and the courage and confidence to take that first step, and help you take it. So book that breakthrough call. If you're at a place in your life, that crossroads in your life where you're ready and you're needing just a little bit of help to find what that roadmap looks like. That's definitely what we do. As always, thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If you're in the midst of reinventing yourself after divorce, a career change, empty nester, or just a significant life transition, remember this. Your heart wants what it wants, but it doesn't know what it needs. The path to rediscovering your identity and rebuilding your confidence isn't about following what feels good right now. It's about having the courage to give yourself what you need, even when that is uncomfortable. You haven't lost yourself permanently. You're just in the space between identities right now. And that space, while disorienting, is also filled with extraordinary potential. Don't rush through it, seeking comfort. Instead, use it as the foundation for building something better, something new, something incredible, so much more incredible than what came before. So until next time, stay strong, stay curious about who you are becoming, and remember, the most bulletproof people in the world are not those who avoid life's hits. They're those who use those hits to build something stronger. Have a great day and week, everybody. Don't forget to check out our free resources at becomingbulletproof.info/resources. Take that step today to becoming more bulletproof.